So showing Finder. So where did he put it in downloads? Okay, so I need to do a little bit of work. So I go here, make the web to Pi nightly. Actually, so I get it. Actually, I got it one more level down. Then once it's here, I think I should use a bigger font. Once it's here, I need to do another thing that anyway you might want to look at, and that is one more thing to do. So I go. I go in the applications, and now here, unfortunately, I have to get to the code on which I was working, because I need to do that, right? So where is my code? My code is on bucket. I put it there for all of you to have. So this is CMPS 183 friends. And this is my clone URL. So this is what you can do also if you want to get this same application. And I do git clone, and then I clone that URL, okay? I mean, I clone that repository. And so this will be called the CMPS 183 friends. Okay, so this will clone the application that I'm building in Ajax. Okay, now the last step I need to do, I'm sorry that there are so many steps, but I don't know how to avoid these kind of things, is this. So here I close this project. I've learned when I work in Eclipse to close projects on which I'm not working, because otherwise you have projects with the same file name. And now I will need to add a new project. Actually, let me do other. It's a PyDev project, and I'll have to browse to where it is, unfortunately, which is work, web to Pi nightly, web to Pi app. Oh, okay, it doesn't want to give me. It doesn't want to give me the path there. But what I want to do is this. Okay, so this is the right path. So I just cut and paste it there, because the Finder has this idea that it should not show me. Let me choose internal places. So web to Pi nightly. Okay, so I add these. I choose the interpreter Anaconda, and this should be it. So, okay, so let's see whether this worked. Yes, this is my application. Okay, so I have the controller default.py, which is here, and we are back into shape. Now, the other thing that I should be doing is this. I'm not running any. I'm not running any web to Pi, so I can just start running web to Pi now, I guess. So I go to work, web to Pi nightly, web to Pi, and this is an app, so I should be able to just open it. No, sorry. Yeah, so this would be the traditional way of running an app, but if I do this, it wouldn't work, right? Because I wouldn't have the console on which I see the standard output, so GAF. So the way I really have to do it is this. I have to go here. You see here, I go up one step, up another step, up. I go to macOS, and here I have Web2Py, right? And here is Web2Py -e. This should produce the error log on the standard output. So this is a magical line, essentially. And if we do this, I hope it works. We will soon see, okay? I do this. This gives me the welcome. I'm in great shape. There should be these. And now I can start the screen sharing. I typically don't want to screen share if I explore too much of my laptop, because of, then confidential information leaks out in every kind of way, okay? But so here we are, here is our screen, okay? And if we go, oh, sorry, I wonder if and there is no good way to get rid of that. But this is our controller. And the interesting part is in friends/edit, okay? I told you that this is a place that lets you edit a list of friends. And actually, so we can go there by taking the browser, going to so the application is called CMPS 183 Friends. And then we have friends, and then we have edit. Okay, so this is the URL. Why invalid request? But let me try to figure out. Okay. Oh, stupid thing. It's because this is gonna be a slightly unpleasant. Web2Py does not like dashes in application names for some reason, okay? And of course, I forgot about it, and I created my Git repository with a dash in it. So, but this is not a big deal, but it's simply a little bit of an inconvenience. So now here, I wonder what this is. Oh, this is me debugging, I think, from the past. So I need to go in another I need to go in content resources, applications, okay, and I need to move these into, let's say, these. Okay, so now it should work better, I guess. Okay, so I should be able to go here. Default index, okay, fine, but I don't want the default index. I want friends edit, okay, which is fine. It asks me to log in. This is normal. Actually, I have to register because this is another instance of Web2Py. So let me register, Luca. It's good to use always the same password for development. Okay, now I'm in. The only other thing that I need to do is that I need to refresh these so that it notices that things have changed the name. Okay, great. Okay, fine. I'm at the initial place. Okay, so I told you that this works in this way. When we go here, we build a web page that does not contain very much in it. Okay, it contains essentially a form with a place where to put the list of friends, where is written above. And I can add other email addresses here. And when I press the add button, this will be communicated to the server, and then we get back a reply, okay? So I instrumented a little bit the application so that, let me show you. But if I go here to the log, okay, I'm logging essentially what happens. So you see, every time I refresh the page, let me see if I can show it to you in parallel. I think so. 1 second, okay? I shrink these a bit vertically. So look at the log, okay? Whenever I refresh this page, you see, I see that we are sending the friends list empty, okay? And if we look at the JavaScript in this page that we wrote, the JavaScript is written here. It's in the views, friends, edit.html, okay? So the JavaScript works in this way. When this is the code that renders the list of current friends, okay? So this is not a function like many other things here, okay? This is just executed every time you load this piece of JavaScript, okay? So this is executed every time the document is ready, essentially, okay? So these are function declarations, so they don't do anything unless you call these functions. But this is what gets executed first. So I execute a get method to get friend URL, which is a URL I've told the web UI which one it is, okay? And when I get the data, I do this with the data. I say friends list is equal to data friends because I sent back a dictionary, right? What I sent back is actually a dictionary. If you look at the code here, okay, get friends gives back a dictionary with the friends as key and friend list as value, okay? So when I'm here, I say get the friends list, okay, and then render list of friends. This is stuff I do in JSON. Now, there is nobody in the friends list, so what I render is this none. But let's see what render list does, okay? Render list is this function here. Then I will show it to you working in JavaScript, okay? So if there are no friends, I take this stdiv. This stdiv is a variable I defined, okay? And it's simply the place on the page where I want to use for writing my friends. So I take that div on the page and I simply put a none over there, okay? That causes that none to appear. Instead, if I have some friends, what do? I say stdiv.empty. This throws away everything that previously used to be there, okay? So I might have had a non-empty friends list, but now I got another one from the server. So what I do is junk away the old one. I clean the entire content of that div. And then I write a simple loop for var I is equal to 0, I is smaller than the length of the friends list, I plus. I take the ith element of the friends list and I put it in S. This will be essentially a string representing an email address, right? It's nothing else than that. And then I call this other function. I say stdiv.append. So this append, like this .empty, are functions that modify the DOM tree of the browser. And when you modify the DOM tree, the browser is kind enough to render it to you in real time, as I told you, okay? So whenever you modify the DOM tree, boom, the browser renders it. And what I'm doing is that I'm using the append function because in this div where I'm gonna put all the email addresses, I may have already some email addresses, I'm looping over the list. And what I'm doing is that I will be adding representations of one email address at a time. But remember, I don't just want to put an email address as a string. I want to actually have a blob with look at, etc. Then I want to put an X so that if you click on the X, you can actually delete this email address. Okay, that's what I want to do. So in order to render this thing, since I have to do it every time I want to display an email address, rather than putting the code there, I wrote a separate function that is called render S. All render S does is it produces the right HTML to display an email address with the X button, okay? So if we look at render S, well, it's kind of trivial, but it's this. It returns a span with a class email address. Why do I add this class email address? Well, you know, because I want to know that I want to be able to find it from either jQuery or JavaScript, right? I want to be able to say, if you click on an X that happens to be in a span that is an email address, then do that. No, so that's why I do it. So I always give classes typically to the elements I add, so that they can then refer to them. So I have I build this span in which I have a class email address. Okay, inside the span I put the string S, which is the email address, and then I put this other subspan here, this one, which generates the X. And I told you how to generate these icons. Okay, these icons are generated from jQuery UI, and there is a whole bunch of them that you can use. Okay, you can go in the documentation of jQuery UI. I showed you the other time, but let me just show you again. jQuery UI icons. You go there, okay, and you find the instructions on. Sorry, let me resize this window. It went sort of. You can find the instructions on how to add them, which is basically what I did, and then you have all these various icons that you can choose from. Okay. So I chose an X for closing, which is one of these many X's, okay? But you have folder icons, etc., etc. And the nice thing is that many of these icons actually scale with the font size in the proper way. And also, if you build the jQuery UI, comes with a standard and you can download it, okay? But if you want, you can, you go to the jQuery UI site, you can essentially customize it. You can say, no, I want a jQuery UI that looks like this. I want this color for the icons, and you know, these various things. And then you download it and you can install it on your own site. So if you need icons, it's highly recommended. You know, these are very standard. They're very well supported, and so it's just a very easy solution. I used this one. I think I used the close thick or close, one of the two. UI icon close and close thick. You see, these two. I use close. Yeah, I think I tried, you know, both of them, and then I found the close thick to be a bit too bold. But you know, you could have, you know, I could have had the choice of many others, and sometimes they add, and so. So you can also put a close in a circle, or you know, of course, you know, I mean, not all of them look appropriate for the situation, but okay. So, but this is what happens when I request to the server a list of email addresses. Okay. Now, how can I add email addresses? Okay. This is unfortunately a bit of code that we have to traverse all at once. But the web page will work as follows. I write here, for example, joe@banana.com. Banana is my favorite computer science fruit. You know, it's easy to type. So now I have this email address, and I will be adding to the friends list. I will add only one at a time in this case. So let me, so what will happen? I need to send this to the server. The server needs to add this to the database, and the server needs to return to me the friends list. So let me first, I think, demo it, okay? So I click here, and this is what happens in near zero time, because, you know, we're running locally. If the server was far away, this would, you know, be slower. Now, let's see what happens. If I look at the logs, let me do it again, actually. Let me just delete it and go here, okay? And joe@banana.com. A lot of this class will be on how to debug your own Ajax, because it's typically not very easy to debug it. I mean, it's not difficult conceptually, but it's just there is stuff happening in too many places. So some of it is in your browser, some of it is in the server. Then you need to figure out whether the transit between one and the other goes fine, and so it's just a little bit annoying. Okay, so let's look at the console output as I click on add. Can you read the output, or is it too small? And then we can do this. Okay. This is always between my feet. Okay, fine. Okay. I hope I didn't close it by doing that. But can you tell me if you can still see me? Okay, so I added these, and look at what the server says. This is because of logging that I added. It's highly recommended to add a bit of logging. So what happened is this. I got a call, okay? I'm essentially logging what method call I got, and I say, find that the server got a post to this URL. There are no arguments. I could have had arguments, but there are no arguments, okay? Because the friends list is associated with my cookie, is associated to me because I'm logged in, so I don't need to specify which friends list. These are my friends. There is no argument to the call, but there are variables that I'm sending in the post, okay? I'm sending these variables manually via post. The variable is called friends, and the only content is joe@banana.com, okay? There is only one friend, apparently. And there is a signature, okay? It's a signed URL for the reasons I told you last time, that if you don't sign these URLs, you expose yourself to, you know, cross-site scripting attacks. So fine. And then this is some things that I log from my code. I log the current friends, the new friends as being joe@banana.com, new friends to insert are joe@banana.com, and what I don't log, because I should have logged it, but I don't do it, is what I returned to the client, okay? But now I want to trace through the code with you, and also maybe insert some bug and see what happens, okay? The first thing is, suppose we add here, you know, Peter at ananas.com. So now I click on add. What happens? What do I need to do? I need to essentially grab the content of the form, but I only want to submit the form. I want to grab the content of the form and send it myself to the server and then process what comes back. So how do I do that? Very common thing to do. And so I do this. My form has an ID of email form. Okay, where did I set this ID? I set this ID here. You see, when I created the form in Python in my edit method, I made sure that I added an ID to the form. Okay, you can add extra fields to a form, extra, you know, how are they called? Attributes. Thank you. Okay, and so I added that so that I would be able to find my form. Okay, so now I say this. Take anything that is called an email form, and I want to attach an event listener. There is, you know, .click would listen to clicks, .hover would listen to hover, whatever would listen to whatever, and in particular .submit listens to submit. Okay, so submit is a special action in HTML, right? Is what a form does basically. I could, of course, also, as an alternative to this, add a listener to the submit button, a click listener to the submit button. But you know, usually this is a better way to do it. You know? I mean, I can tell you later why it's better. But so you do this, and when you click when you submit, there is this function that takes as argument to the event E. I'm not sure I do anything with this event E. I probably don't do anything actually, because I know which event it is. It's the submit event of that form. In other cases, sometimes you can add the listeners, and we will be doing it to many elements at once. And so then you need to read the details of the event. You need to say, hey, okay, fine, I got an event, but where was the event? Where did it happen? In this case, actually, the event doesn't really carry any information that is useful for me, so I don't do anything with it. But I do this. I hide the error because we will see it later, but this page can display error messages. For example, you can say, hey, Luca is not a valid email address. No, because I just wrote my name without the @ sign or anything. So if I had errors due to the previous form submit, I remove them, because it would be, you know, sort of inappropriate to leave them from one submission to the next. So I remove the errors. You can read later how I do this. It's not, you know, you can read it for yourself. But now the task is this. I have to grab the string that you have there, and I have to pass it to the server. And so there is a bit of decision. These email addresses have to be in a certain format. I cannot simply say Luca, Joe, You know, they have to be well-formed email addresses that can be separated by spaces or commas or a mix. So there is a decision to do. Do you parse these and validate it in the browser or in the server? And this is a little bit your choice, okay? Perhaps in theory it would be slightly nicer to validate in the browser, because so you don't need to talk to the server if you have a mistake, right? However, I feel a little bit lazy, and especially I'm much more familiar with ways in which I can validate email addresses and things like that in Python rather than JavaScript. So here I took the decision of not trying to be smart, but I simply want to take the list of what the user typed and pass it to the server as a list, as a string, without trying to do anything smart. The smartness will happen on the server side. Okay, so what I do is this. I say var new emails is equal to notable add friends dot val. When you have an input field and you want to fish out the value that the user typed in it, you use the dot val function. Okay, so this gives me the string. Okay, now I need to build a JSON thing that the browser will be able to take apart and interpret in JSON. Okay, so the way I do it is that I build it in a bit of this manual way. I don't know whether this is the best way, but this is a sort of the easiest way that has worked. So essentially, I need to build a post that contains variable equals and then a field that is encoded in a string that is encoded in JSON. Okay, because on the other side, on the server side, if you look at what I got, right, when I did these calls, sorry, when I do these calls, I get in the post the friends variable that has as value this string here, which is a JSON encoding of a string, right? That's what I want. So I have to build this post that contains a variable assigned to something, okay? And I do it in this way. I say that my message is friends equal plus the JSON encoding of the string. Maybe there is an easier way of doing this, but this is a sort of easiest way that I found to make web2py talk nicely to the JSON on the other side, okay? Because essentially I don't want the JSON to be there like that. I want the JSON to be the value of a specific variable, okay? So that's why I do this way, okay? Now, so once I build these, I say jQuery.post. jQuery.post means please do a post call in Ajax. So this means don't refresh the page, but behind the scenes, do a post call to this particular URL that is called add friend URL. Give it this message. This is the content of the post, right? So that the variable friends will have this value JSONified. And when you get back the answer, do the following, okay? So at this point, the control is handed off to the server. When I get back, this data will be, now I show you the server code later, but I just want to show it to you very quickly, okay? Add friends is this function here. But it will be a dictionary in which the message will be okay, and the variable friends will be the list of friends. Why do I send back a dictionary with two fields? Because when you try to add friends, there can be two outcomes. Okay, one is okay plus the new friends list, and another outcome is instead an error message. Okay, so I want to have a field message. Okay, and I want to be able, that when there is an error instead. My message will be an error message. I mean, you can see it here, right? This is a case in which I want to return an error. Okay, so coming back to this code, when I get the data, I need to check. If the message is okay, this means that I really received a good friends list. And my job is easy, because what I need to do then is this. Var friends is equal to data friends, so I know I extracted this list of friends. Now it's a list. I say render list friends, and then I say this notable add friends val empty string. You see, this is very similar to this. In this case, I give no argument to val, and this means please get me the current content. If I instead specify a string, this means please replace the current content with what I tell you. And what I do here is essentially that I'm clearing the field, the input field. Because once you submit some new friends, right? But you want the input field to become empty again so that you can type some more friends. Okay? So this is what happens if I get an okay reply. Otherwise, I show the error data message, okay? And show error, what it does is that it builds a representation for an error and it appends it to the error location. Error lock is simply a div that is that I put there in the web page to hold the error message, if any. Okay, so this is the page, and where do I put the error location? What is error lock? Oh, okay, fine. So yeah, I simply put it at the bottom of the form. I don't do anything very special, I guess. Okay, you can look at where it is, but I just wanted to append it at the bottom of the form, so nothing very special. I thought I had made a special div to hold the error, but instead, you know, it turned out to be simpler to do it this way. Okay, so so this is what happens on the browser side. On the server side, the code is rather standard for you at this point. But let me just quickly walk you over the code. These couple of lines read who are my current friends, okay? And I log it, okay? Then I want to look at the request.var.friends. Why do I look at this variable? Okay, because this variable is what I used on the other side to encode my my post request. If this variable is not defined, then I don't have any new friends. Okay, if the variable is defined, then the new friends are JSON loads. So I decode the JSON string of the request var friends. Now remember, these new friends is just a string. It could contain many friends, right? Let me just give you an example of how that works, right? I can say here, I can say peter@bananas.com and like ann@apple.com, okay? So I can give you two of these on the same row, okay? Let me add, so you can see the different requests. So if I do these, they will both be added. But see, to the server, I send this string without bothering splitting the email addresses. And it's on the way back from the server that I will get it split, okay? So now on the server, I do this. I get these new friends. New friends is equal to normalize email list of new friends, okay? So this function is what does all the work. You can go read it if you like, but normalize email list essentially takes a big string, chops it into pieces, and checks that every piece is actually a valid email address and not, you know, some kind of junk. Okay, so at this point, so if I have too many friends that I want to add in a single blow, I complain. This is simply code that I inserted. This is sort of a real code I adapted very heavily, actually adapted from ProGrader, how I built the friends list there, okay? But in ProGrader, like in any other system, once you give me a list of friends, actually what I need to do is not only that I put them in a database, but I need to do a few checks. And this goes into a database transaction. The database transaction I want to be quick. Okay, I don't want somebody to have, you know, 10,000 students at the same time and have a request, a transaction on the database that would last us some 20 seconds or so. Okay, because very long transactions are heavy on databases. So what I want is this, that even if you might have a very large class, you want to add your students, in case of ProGrader, is actually 200 at a time. But so that every database transaction is kind of small. And so here I still have this restriction. I change it to 100, just to give you an example of something you can do, so that when you type your friends list, the one thing that I learned is this: it's always a very, very good practice to always put limit on what you do. Okay, never accept something that is unbounded. Okay, because people can really exploit it and crash your site. And you think that this may very rarely happen, but it does happen actually. Because of nastiness, or quite often because of ineptitude. Somebody with a mouse cut and pastes, and they don't realize that they cut and pasted their entire research paper in your friend's list just because they had it there. And so boom, they send you this like 100 kilobyte thing that is not a friend's list, and you cannot afford to get such large pieces of input. So you have to always be protective of your service. So always make sure that you can you only accept content that you can actually do something with, and it's much better practice to break things into smaller pieces that succeed than trying to do too much. Okay, so I have these. So if there are too many friends, I return an error message. Then I say, okay, these are my new friends. I use here the set facility of Python because some friends I might have already added them, so I don't want to add them twice, obviously. So I'm now computing the difference, the set difference between the new friends minus the current friends. So those are the really new friends, sort of. Okay, those are inserted in the database with a loop. I think I could do something more sophisticated to insert them in parallel, but I don't care, very much in this moment. Okay, now I extend the list of new friends, the current friends with the new friends. So the current friends will contain all your friends. I sorted the list. Why do I sort the list? I sorted the list because in this way, the user will have an easier time if they want to delete a friend to know where to find the friend in the list if the list is long, right? And then I return it. Okay, so if you look at the code from here, to show you the sorting, if I now have Bob at, well, that's not a fruit, but piv.com, okay, Bob will be added in second position, okay? Great, so what happens if I have a mistake? Well, let's try to add some mistakes, okay? So here I can add my blah, okay? So let's see whether the modification works. So here is where my log is. So now I say, for example, Joe at, I don't know, carrot.com is not a fruit, but who cares? Okay, fine. Okay, this is the new thing that Massimo very kindly did. Now we can see the error and the trace back directly here. This is a fantastic thing, actually. Okay, because normally we would have had to teach the error, pick it out of the web page somewhere. So I'm very much a fan of these of the log, the error log going to the console. It makes it very easy to debug. So now we see trace back, global name blah is not defined, and I can also see that is in line 110. So yes, line 110 is this blah. Okay, so this is this essentially enables you to both log and see the errors on the server side. So I'm sorry, maybe you think it's trivial, but actually it did not come exactly with Web2Py. So this is things that sort of we built for the class. It's kind of nice. It makes the debugging much easier. Now, the other thing that you will be doing is that you will be doing errors in your JavaScript, of course. Okay, I mean, not of course. I mean, maybe not. But what happens if you do an error in your JavaScript, essentially? Well, the way to debug the JavaScript is this. You can view the developer tools for this. It's just that there is never enough space. do I do it? Maybe the only way is really to pop it out in a separate window in the end and do this, okay? So there is enough space. So you see, sorry, where's my JavaScript here? Sorry, I'm a little bit lost here. It's not in neither of these places. Okay, it's here. Okay, it's I had to reload essentially the page in order to be able to see it. Okay, so this is my JavaScript, and so suppose I want to actually figure out what happens when I add a friend. Okay, so this is my submit function. Okay, and suppose I want to see what happens after I get the data back from the server, because I might be rendering my email list in the wrong way. Okay, suppose that this is my problem. So what I can do is this. Here, this is my post. Okay, and I can double click here, actually single click here, and this will insert a breakpoint. So every time the code reaches that, the execution will stop, and I will be able to see what happens. Okay, so now let me go to the other page, and now I can add another friend that is, I don't know, David at what is well, I don't know, potato.com. Okay, so I do this, and I click on add, and let's see what happens. Okay, I got the reply, and I'm back here. So if I want, I can look at the server log. Okay, new friends to insert is David at potato.com. So it seems, you know, the server hasn't really complained about anything. And the beautiful thing is that here, sorry, let me just do this. Here, I can examine every variable I want. For example, data is an object. You see, this data is what I got back. So for example, if I wonder, you know, what did I get back from the server? Maybe I got back, you know, something that is not correct. So I can just hover on it, actually, and it tells me that friends is an array with 5 elements. No, this data is an object, okay? And objects, remember, in JavaScript, have fields. So this object has 2 fields, friends and message, okay? And also some proto that we don't care about so much. But the friends is an array of length 5, and if I open it, this is the content of the array. It's of length 5, and this is the content. So it's extremely easy. Actually, it's a very nice visual debugger. It didn't used to be so nice. They improved it a lot. In fact, the hover function, I think, is relatively new. It didn't used to be there. I don't know. Last year, it wasn't there. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I had it last time. But anyway, whatever. So it keeps getting better and better. When I started coding in JavaScript, it was not nearly as nice many years ago. But so in this way, you know, you can see exactly what you get. And now we are here, and we can either resume execution, or we can step over them. So whenever you debug, you can either debug taking a step into or skipping functions, okay? And so step into the next function call. Well, in this case, there is not so much to do, but okay. So var friends is equal to data friends. Okay, I can go here. At this point, if I hover over friends, I see that it's an array of length 5, so I fish them out correctly. And then if I do this, I will go to render list friends, okay? If friends list of length 0, else, etc., etc. And I can basically, oh, okay, I did something stupid. I essentially went inside the jQuery code, which is, you know, a bad idea. Now I will be here forever, okay? So then I can say just resume all the execution and go there, okay? And so I ran my code till the end because I sort of got bored, okay? And so we have the david@potato.com there as well. Great, okay? So this is how you essentially debug the code. On the server side, you can log it and you will see the error on the console. On the client side, well, you can single step in your code and you can examine the value of all the variables, okay? So, of course, there will be still things that are a bit difficult to find, but this is, you know, a huge help. So, the other thing that I wanted to show you is this. Now, if I have the other thing you can do is this. Let me add one more friend, like I don't know, Helen at what is another thing? I don't know, cabbage.com. Okay, so if I do this, I can also here in this console, I can look at the network, and I can look at these XHR requests. These are the Ajax requests. Okay, so look at what happens. Now I click on add. Okay, it throws me here because I have the breakpoint. Okay, fine. But if I go back to the network, I see that I have one more post. Okay, and here I can look at the response as well. So you see, I can look at the response in two different ways. I can look at the response in JavaScript by examining this data variable, or I can look at the response here because I can. I don't know how to scroll these, but there must be some way. Here, okay. But I can also look at the response directly from the network. Okay. And the two contain slightly different information, okay? Because, for example, the network tells me if the request went through in the first place, for instance. You know, I may have some network problems sometimes. Not in this case because it's local, but if you're debugging some real application, sometimes you wonder, you know, am I even getting to the server, yes or no? Or perhaps more trivially, did my JavaScript send the request or not? Because maybe on the server you don't see anything. So you say, am I hitting some stupid URL somewhere that I don't know what it is, or am I not even sending the request? No? So you can do all this debugging from the server side. I mean, from the network as well. Okay, and you can preview the response and you know, the headers, the preview of the request. So this is a response actually, but if you want to look at the form data, this is the form data. It's in the headers, okay? So this is my encoded form, essentially. Okay? Great. Now, what I wanted to go back a moment to is deleting friends. Let me just now go to the sources and remove this breakpoint and just run it to completion. By the way, there is this piece of JavaScript code re-enables the submit button. So recently in Web2Py, they made a change. They decided that when you click on the submit button, they disable it. The code for doing that is in web2py.js. So the submit button changes and it simply says working, ... Okay, and you cannot click it any further. If you don't do anything, it will stay that way forever. It's your job, if you use Ajax, to restore the submit button to the previous state in which it becomes clickable again. And you can do it by calling jQuery.webpy.enable where B is your button. Okay, so essentially, once the request comes back and once I know that everything is fine, I enable the button. Okay, if you remove those lines, the button will stay grayed out with a working written on it. You can try for yourself. Okay, now this line is important. I told you that the model of handling events in JavaScript is this. You give an event to a, so suppose you click on a button, okay? This causes maybe the submit event. The submit event is handled by all the listeners that the browser finds on that element or on enclosing elements, okay? So essentially, whenever there is an you know, the DOM tree is a tree. The DOM is first tree of the page is a tree, okay? And let me draw on the bar here. But if this is the tree of elements in the browser, okay, so whatever, no? But if you have an event, the events are typically on leaves, right? Because the event specifically might be on a button, or it can be on a span, or on a whatever, right? It's on the most tightly enclosing. And then the browser will look, is there a handler here? Yes, no, fine. No, there is none. Okay, I go up one step. Is there a handler here? This is why, by the way, I could put a handler on the whole form, even though the submit event is generated on the button simply, okay? But so the browser will go here and it asks, is there a handler here? Yes, no, yes. Okay, fine. And then it will run the handler. Now, it will run the handler, but it will also continue the traversal app. Okay? So if you don't want to continue the traversal app, your event handler would have to return false. I don't do it in this way, in this moment, because there is no other explicit event listener. The other thing is that some events, like the submit event, have a default behavior. The default behavior of the submit event in a form is to send the form. And I want to prevent that. So I have to say E is my event, is the argument of the function. That's where the only place I use it, I guess. And I say this event here now, do prevent the default behavior of the event. I can also say return false, but in this case there is no other listener. And actually, no, in this case there is another listener. The submit event has another listener, which is the Web2Py listener that grays out of the button. I have the feeling, I haven't tried it, you can try it for yourself, that if I add it to this function that gets the submit event, if I add here a return false at the end, that Web2Py would actually not gray out of the button. I don't know whether it's true, okay? Maybe I don't know exactly how Web2Py listens to it, so I might be making a mistake, but I believe it's true, okay? So this concludes how to do how to add people. Now, how do you delete people? Okay, deleting people is in a way a sort of harder problem in JavaScript in some sense. I mean, it's not very much harder, but the issue is this: there are many X's. Okay, and I want to be able to listen to an event on any one of those X's. Okay, so there are I think a couple of ways of doing it. One way of doing it that I don't encourage you to do would be to add a listener to each one of those X buttons. No, you could essentially find all the X's and add one by one a listener to each one of those elements. Okay, or maybe you could add the listener at the time you create the email address. There is this render email, I think I called it. And there you could add the listener directly to that element. You just created it, you can add a listener to it, okay? This is not recommended. The reason this is not recommended is that this would lead you to create web pages in which there are many event listeners attached to the DOM tree. The DOM tree for the email list will look something like this, okay? So there is some stuff on top, then there is the form, okay? Then there is a couple of, you get into the table for the form, and then there will be a place in which you have one of these things, one child for each one of these email addresses. Actually, there is one child that contains some subchildren, each one of them, because there is the icon and there is the email address, etc., etc. Okay, but essentially you have one of these children for each email address, and if you have 100 friends, you're going to have 100 children there, and you don't want to add 100 separate listeners. I mean, you can do that, but it might make the page a little bit unresponsive. Okay, it's not the best way to do it. What you do is this: you add a listener to the click event to an upper place. You can add it to wherever you want. You can even add it to the whole document. A listener to the click, and then you say, if the click happens on an element of this type, then do the following. Okay, so you add only one listener on top you can decide where, but on top of, on a structure that is on top of all these elements, and then you say whenever the element clicked is of this type, do something. There is a special construct for these, and if we go here is this. There is this stdiv. You know, stdiv, remember, is the div in which I'm putting all the email addresses. Okay, so I'm saying stdiv.on. This means attach a listener that is a listener to click. When the listener is on something that is of class email clause, and this class email clause, if we look up, okay, it's the class of the span that contains the icon. So essentially this means if you click on any access, okay, then do the following. Okay, I want to hide the error, fine. Now, the problem is this, that now I have added a single listener to many elements. So here I really need to figure out, you know, which element did I click on? And if you look at the structure, there is, I click here, but what I really want is the value of this. Okay, and so there will be essentially, you know, the tree will be that there is a span with a subspan in it and some text. So I need to navigate that to get the text, because I need to know which email addresses you wanted to delete. So I'm doing this. $this, sorry, what did I do? $this is a way to say, give me in jQuery the element on which the event was triggered. Okay, so I'm getting the event on which this was triggered, which is the span of the X. Then I go to the parent. You can navigate in the DOM tree. Okay, once you select an element in jQuery, you can go to the parent of the parent, to the first child of the parent. You know, you can navigate around. It's a tree, right? So you can go to siblings, etc. So in this case, I go to the parent span, because the parent span is the one that will contain the email address, okay? And then I get the text in it. This will give me the email that I want to delete, okay? Then again, I build my message, that because I want to do a post to the server with a variable containing a particular thing, right? So I again build my message, and I do a jQuery post of the deleted friend. I give my message, okay? And then I get some data back, okay? And I would have two choices here. The sort of long choice would be then to proceed just as I do in add, right? I expect that the server, when I delete an email address, the server will respond to me with the set of all the email addresses. But in this case, I don't need it. I can just, locally, when you delete one of these things, remove it directly from the web page once I know that it was deleted on the server. So what I do is this. If the message is okay, so if the delete succeeded, I get the event target parent. Okay, I think here I could have written this, actually. I don't know why I wrote one way in one way and the other way in the other. Okay, I think here I could have written this simply. It's like this dot parent. Okay, so it's the same thing. But I take the parent, which is the span that contains the email and also the button, and I say remove, and this will remove it from the DOM tree. Okay, so if I do this, things disappear right away. And you can look on the server log what happens really. Okay, so if I now delete, yeah, right. But if I now delete David, you see, it's deleted, and this is a server log. I got a call to friends, delete friend. The friend is David. The deleted friend is David. Removing the friend David. This is all logging that I wrote server side. Okay, so so this gives you sort of the basics. Sorry if I went into great detail, but this gives you the basics of how to talk to the server, send information back and forth, and modify the DOM tree in response. Okay. Now there is a sort of complicated subtlety on this. That is, how should you keep the user in the loop of what you have done? This is a typical problem. For example, here, I decided to do the following, okay? When you delete a friend, I actually don't do anything until I get the server response. This would mean that if you are on a very slow internet connection, when you click delete friend, you may not see anything for a couple of seconds. Okay, suppose you're on a mobile phone that has just like a bad connection, etc. Before this goes to the server and comes back, there might be some noticeable round trip time. This can be very annoying from the UI side, right? Because you are there, maybe you are using this website from a phone, you touch to delete, and you think that you see that the thing doesn't disappear immediately. So you think maybe I didn't touch it correctly, no? You lick your finger, you try to touch it again, or you know, you do these kind of things. So how to do it better? It would be slightly better this, that when I touch to delete a friend, I add a class to the element saying that says essentially that I'm trying to delete it. Now I make its color fade a little bit. No? And then when I get the response on the server, I actually remove it. So that I have some visual feedback of the fact that I actually clicked there. Because here there is no feedback of the sort. In fact, we can see that there is no feedback of the sort because I can go here, I can stop the server, okay? This stopped it. And now I can do this. Hey, it's broken my site, okay? And it's not broken, and but it looks broken to a user. If you go in the network tab, you see all these requests that fail, okay? Sorry, what is headers preview response failed to load response data? Okay, so I mean, if you look here, all these fail in this way. Okay, so we would have to improve the code in that way. In general, these are difficult questions actually. Yeah? So this is where the design becomes a little bit more complicated. Because suppose I fade it in color, how long does it stay faded? Boosh, I don't know, maybe forever. I mean, after a while, it should fade itself because essentially the request failed, right? So what do you want to do? You want to essentially call some event in the future that says, fade it now, and if you still find it after a few seconds, you know, then defade it. You know, it's complicated actually. I don't see a lot of things that work in that way. Or another thing that you can do is this. You can add an on-error method to this post. This would probably be a better solution. Okay, so these methods that you have an on-error method. In this case, the error you get immediately because I just hit the server. So, but suppose there is just a very long delay before you can reach the server. Okay, then you can add an on-error handler for this post, and when that comes up, you can display an error message somewhere. For example, that says lost connection to the server. This is similar to what Gmail does, right? If you are trying to send a message and you just remove the internet connection, it will tell you, I'm sorry, but I failed to contact the server. You know, try again later, and it tries to cache the information in some way. Okay. Another thing that is very important in this design of this Ajax is that as much as you can, you should try to make requests that communicate state and not changes. Okay. So you never know whether the user is going to repeat the request or whether something is going to repeat the request. Okay, so never say, you know, increment this thing by 1 if you know the value. It would be much better to say, no, set this thing to this value, because in that way, if the message needs to be repeated twice, it will have the same effect. Okay, this is a general idea to try to transmit state as much as you can rather than changes. In fact, if you like, at some point, I can give you a sort of nice side chat on how difficult it is to achieve consensus between separate server and client. Maybe this will be appropriate. If there is time at the end of this class, I can give it to you. If you are on an asynchronous protocol where messages can get lost, which is the case here, actually. Okay. So this is essentially the main part of what I wanted to do. At this point, we really have the instruments to do a lot. So perhaps I'm not promising to code it on the fly, but for example, what do you want to do? What is some problem that you may try to solve? I can perhaps start working through the steps I would take to solve it, if I know how. But for your projects, what do you need to do? Yes?
Receiving data in real time.
Sorry?
Receiving data in real time.
From the server?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's actually a kind of thing to do. So there are two ways of doing that. One way is to not receive server data in real time, but to hold it. And this is by far the most common. You decide, okay, let's hold every 2 seconds. Okay, this might be enough. If you really need real time, like in a chat client or something like that, what you need to do is something more complicated that I want to go into another time. You need to essentially keep a channel always open from the server to you. And you must try to read it all the time and display all the day in real time the changes. So it's a more complicated thing than what we're doing here. However, a lot of times, you can do a lot by just thinking every few seconds. Other things? Yes?
What is the internet messaging system?
A messaging system?
Between like 2 people would set up profiles and then be able to message each other and history of messages.
Right. Then but the messages can be asynchronous, right? So you simply type a message, etc. So then you could do something very similar to this, right? You can build a nice form where people can say, we can compose their message. You can steal from the wiki homework markup language if you think it's we want to use it. If you want to enable people to write in richer markup, right? But essentially people can write what they want and they can hit send. And when you hit send, you can also use Ajax to tell the server, which would avoid reloading the page. For example, suppose I'm in a thread of conversation with you. I see your last message that is, let's meet, I don't know, at School of Engineering at 4. I type my reply, and then I can as soon as I can contact the server, and as soon as I know that this has been sent, I can transform it in text and add it at the top or bottom of the thread of discussion. It would look much better than, for example, I should do that in ProGrader. There's a button that people seem to miss, and they have to ask you your feedback on the design of that. But there is you can discuss submissions. If there is something you don't understand. There is this button that enables you to discuss that. And there, instead, I took the lazy way out because I don't do it using Ajax. I should, but I don't. Okay? I implemented that in a hurry, but so you can do it that way. Okay? Other things? Yeah?
So I'm wondering about making a search and have a box that shows potential auto queries for the search as a type, kind of like Google does.
Yes.
Would that be possible?
Oh, absolutely. So what you would do is this, essentially, okay? There are many events, and in fact, let me show you actually where you find the documentation of some of these, because it's useful. It's very useful, I think, to know where to find these things. So jQuery event. Okay, this will give us the various events. Hold on. Event properties. I think I should have chosen the other search results, because I want to know not the event object, but what events I have. Okay, so see, there is what I'm looking at are these events that can capture when you press a key. Okay, focus in, focus out, hover, key down, key press, key up. So it's so precise that you can decide, should the completion happen when you press the next letter or when you release it? Maybe when you press it. I don't know, but why not gain a bit of time, right? So you can say, okay, fine. When you press this letter, what would you do? You are typing inside an input field, right? So on that event, I could almost start writing the code, but I think you can imagine it in your mind, similarly to what I wrote for this form. You capture the key down event. You get the value of what is in that input field. You send it to the server with, in this case, I probably wouldn't use a post request, but I would use a GET request. Why? because a GET request shades out at any little bit of time, because it's essentially only in the header, so there's no body to the request. So it's, you know, an epsilon faster, and in this case you want to be very fast. So you send it to the server compiles a reply that can be, you know, a list of stuff, and so you can take this list of stuff and you can transform it, encode it into JSON and return it. At this point, you know, similar to here how I render my list of friends, you can take this list of stuff and show it in some place. Okay, so, and you can do it, and it's easy to do. One thing that is incredibly common to do is this: give you so you know what Google does is way more sophisticated, and what you're proposing is also more sophisticated. But suppose that what you want to do is simply auto-completion. Okay, is there a way? In fact, actually, for what you're doing, I could use the auto-completion facility. Let me tell you what it is. There is a large number, and I wanted to do them this time or a bit of the next, but there is a large number of predefined interactions that you can take advantage of in jQuery UI. So jQuery is this JavaScript library that enables you to talk to the browser, okay? jQuery UI is a set of plugins that people wrote that do very useful things, like they do calendar, they do many things. And let me show you how the completion would work. I would use that. Just a starting point that does a lot for you. So you go to jQuery UI, okay, and here, demo download, API documentation, hey, oh, here, so autocomplete. You click here, okay, and so you can tap, nothing happens. Okay, so, but there are various ways of using it, okay? So the default functionality is one in which you statically give to the browser the list of things it should complete from. Frankly, you know, I rarely use that because typically my list of completions, unless it's like 5 things, my list of completion is always dynamic and quite large. For example, let me give you an example. And your example maybe a good one, but in CurveGrader, I have a way, when you give me your late homework, I can add it for you. And so I started typing the name of the student, it looks up the class list and it completes it. Okay, fine. In that case, you say multiple values, remote JSON data source. Okay, so this is done using a remote data source, and you see it simulates the fact that it loads slowly, and then it gives you the completions. And if you continue typing, it would update it. In this case, I don't know why it's so slow. Oh, I know why it's so slow, because it's using the remote server, I don't know where, which is actually slower, right? And so if you do this, you can also look at the code, okay? And this gives you directly what you have to use. So this is the code that generates that. So it looks large, but it's not, right? So this is just, you know, the style sheets you have to include. All you need to do is this, basically. So this is the code. But what you need to do is this, that the input ID birds, okay, and you see, you take in jQuery the element birds, so this is the input field where we want the autocomplete to be active, and you start saying, oh, on this particular thing, use autocomplete. The source is this URL. They use PHP, but you can use, you know, the URLs as we, you know, Web2Py URL, obviously, right? Just as I was doing in my Ajax. The minimum length is the minimum length because you don't want to autocomplete on the first character. Maybe you want to wait until people write 2 or 3 characters. Otherwise, the set of results is, you know, almost arbitrarily large, you know? And then, yeah, this is a function that is called when you select a particular element. I'm not even sure that, I mean, you can just copy it, or you can do what you want. The only thing that is used is that if I write here hold on, and then I click here, You see, it writes this in the result. You may not need that at all. Okay, if you don't need to do anything else with your select, just don't do anything. If you just want to autocomplete. Okay, but that's a very easy way to do that, and I used it a lot. And in fact, it's really worth when you do your project to familiarize. These are things that are incredibly easy to use. Oh, by the way, and the query that is sent, if you don't know what query is sent, well, it's in the API documentation, but I think why not? Let's look at it. If you look at the developer tools for these, you can look at the network tab, and now I can write, for example, com again. Okay, this will do a request. Sorry, I should go here. You see, it uses term equals and then writes what you have in the autocompletion. So on the other side of it, you will have a variable called the term. You can change the name if you don't like it, okay? But the default is to use the term equals. So you look up for, in Web2Py would be request.vars.term, and you will find there the string that you have to autocomplete, and you can return pretty much what you want, okay? I mean, it has to be a list, I guess, right? To work in this way. So if you want an autocomplete that includes images, etc., then you have to cook it on your own, but it's not so hard. So it really pays off to look at what you have available here. There is a draggable interaction. So if you want to make some elements draggable, and there are many options. You can constrain the movement. You can this cannot be dragged horizontally and is only vertically, but you can have many elements that are draggable. Okay, you can avoid getting out of the parent. So there is a lot of things you can do. Droppable. Okay, you can drop stuff one into the other. Okay, pretty useful. I mean, you may have like a container that says, "Who are your good friends?" You make a list of droppable friends. And then you can say tuk tuk tuk, like Google Plus, you can form circles. I kind of find it unwieldy, but some people like it. Resizable, no? You can make anything you want resizable. Yoink. Selectable, you have many. Oh, let me buy these and also these and these. Thank you very much. Sortable, very useful, right? Oh, this is my order of preference. Okay. And here we have widgets that you can equally easily use. So this is an accordion widget. You can see only one at a time. There is an autocomplete that we saw. There is a button widget, and the button widget does a button. Okay, not very deep, but it looks like a button, and it really behaves like a button. It's very impressive. You can have a date pickers. Okay, so when you click there, this is basically similar to what Web2Py uses, okay? And I think that there is also dates in other months, so display button bar, inline, month and year menu, format data. I mean, there is a lot of it. So you can look at them. Progress bar, okay? And the source is this. So you simply do a progress bar, and once you have a progress bar, you just give it a value. Okay, and so you can just update it as you go along and as you want from JavaScript. So jQuery UI is very highly recommended essentially. Every time you can do an interaction using these, you save a lot of your time. Slider, I don't know. Yeah. And this selects a numeric value. So if you look at the source code, there must be some place where you can get the value. Okay, I don't know where. I have not used it. Anyway, so you can go on and there is a whole set of them. It's very highly recommended. Yeah. Other questions? Okay. I think next time, okay. Or shall I? No, it's a bit out of. Otherwise, I'm sort of done with Ajax at this point. So I'll have to give another homework on Ajax eventually. Okay, it will be the last homework. Is there any other question or general question? Otherwise, we might as well end the class, I guess. All happy. Okay, great. Well, thanks.